Mighty I Am Presence, in the heart of the great central sun, pour forth the magnificent river of life and envelop every part of this world in your sustaining radiance and grace. Buoy up the hearts of the downtrodden. Wipe away all tears and sorrow and fear which hath torment. Lift up those hearts in your great stream of God, bliss, and happiness. Suffuse this glow of eternal youth and vitality, of faith and hope and charity, and the abundance of your joy throughout all of the nature kingdom, throughout the earth, throughout the feeling world, throughout the mind world that envelops this planet. May it be cleansed of its cups of unrighteousness, and may your eternal glory fill it all with the grace, the stillness, and the magnificence that is found in the very heart of hearts of your own being, that great central sun magnet which includes the furthest periphery of creation. Beloved Lord Mahachohan, beloved beings of the elements, we ask that you join in our praise and adoration as we sing unto the Most High Living God praises for the magnificence of life as that God continues to pour forth and sustain life everywhere. Thank you. Please be seated. To all of you who are joining with us today, we welcome you to this final session of Acropolis Sophia, the Crucible and the Crystal Fire Mist. This is the culmination of a week-long study and a plunging of our consciousness into the fiery crucible of our own beloved threefold flame, which we have come to appreciate and understand as the flame of our own mighty God presence, the altar of that presence within the body temple. And we've come to know this magnificent crystal fire mist not only as a great and glorious cloud of witness, but a distillation of the great liquid, luminous sea of God life that is everywhere present. As we take up this attainment in the crucible of the heart, it can be magnified, and through the process of co-measurement and correspondences, you are now able to make the resonant identification with the crucible of the very heart of God, the heart in the great central sun. One of the initial trainings of the students this past week was to liken the threefold flame to the tendrils of a plant, the lowly strawberry, and how it is able to propagate itself out across the field by sending forth extensions of its parent seedling and branching out in all directions. Not only does it go out, but it is possible for each one of us to realize that our crystal cord connects us like this vine or this little shoot from the strawberry plant. That this crystal cord does not terminate finally at the level of our own mighty I Am presence, but symbolically we are able to conceive of this crystal cord as the living vine that reaches on and on and on and finds its point of origin in the very heart of God, in the great central sun. So it is to that great central sun that we direct your attention this day. Understand that as you have been learning and training yourself to hold your attention at the attenuation, the high attunement of your own mighty I Am presence, having reached that high plateau, you are well equipped to, in the flash and in the twinkling of an eye, also center your consciousness in the heart of hearts, in the great central sun, and realize that this heart is a corresponding action to the heart of your own mighty I Am presence, save for the consciousness that wells up there in the heart of the great central sun. We would like you to hold awareness of yourself as this threefold flame that is almost like a lotus flower, having many, many petals, such as the 1,000 petals of the crown, that is resting gently on the surface of this great sea of universal life. Remembering that all of plant life is able to perform a certain miracle of life. It is able to take the emerald green of the chlorophyll and able to synthesize the seed the light and heat from the sun and the water that it draws upon, and it is able to combine all of these elements and fashion for itself its own nourishment in the sugars and the other nourishment that is brought about through the miracle of photosynthesis. There is a key to your own overcoming that is to be discovered in this emerald matrix miracle of liquid emerald light, the emerald of chlorophyll. For you can begin to appreciate that your destiny is to be able to draw forth from the source of the sun within yourself every last component that you need for self-expression. Unlike the current members of the creaturely kingdom, the animal kingdom of this planet, and to a certain extent even the physical bodies of ordinary human beings, who must rely upon secondary sources for this direct light of the sun. You, as Ascended Master students, now more conversant with the action of your threefold flame, are learning how to synthesize the light of the great central sun, to draw it forth from that primary source and live upon that source directly. This is one of the great transfers of consciousness which the Ascended Masters hope to make for all of you. For you to begin to realize that your destiny, even now before your ascension, is to understand that, lo and behold, miracle of miracles. It is true that you may rely 100%, to drive home the point, let's say you may rely 1,000% upon the light and the life and the love that issue forth from your own mighty I Am presence, which is your own source. Oh, what an immense relief it will be on that day and in that hour when this realization is driven home in your conscious awareness. When you realize that you are not dependent upon the ebb and flow of the karmic tides that govern the masses of humanity here upon the crust of this world we call the earth. You are not reliant in the final analysis for the productivity of even one other individual, much less the whole chain reaction of productivity produced by a modern civilization. Oh yes, it might be that some assistants might buy a little bit more time and opportunity and the luxury of a sufficient amount of time to apply the law. But right now, today, you have to turn the corner to the realization that from the beginning to the end, your source is your presence, your own I Am presence. Your source is the great central sun. And if you learn to rely utterly and completely upon that source, drawing on that source, qualifying it, demanding and commanding that it come forth, and you begin to feel the leverage of eternity as your mighty I Am presence, and indeed the great I Am in all of life, begins to swing into action from the great inner worlds, and all of the inner worlds and the creatures and all of creation focuses upon the decree that you have made in the office of your God presence. And from within out, there begins the inexorable march into manifestation of those answers to the decrees which you have made. Oh, what peace will fill your spirit when you realize that your destiny, even now in this world, is to be a being of cause only, a being illumined so as to use this power of creation in the harmonious, loving way, so that there is never any return of limitation or of restriction or a binding action that would in any way cripple your expression in life. But rather, you stand poised in the exaltation of drawing forth from your source, your mighty I Am presence, all that you require, and sending it forth into life, synthesizing from that one universal substance and that one universal life that flows forth from the great central sun, synthesizing whatever you might need in this world, be it transportation, clothing, food, companionship, recreation, shelter, whatever it might be, everything can and will come forth and be drawn forth from within yourself. Part of this consciousness that is the great reward to those Ascended Master students who have learned to connect with their presence is this sense of their presence and of the great central sun as the source. It is, as it were, an artesian well that once your attunement is able to reach into that realm and open the door of consciousness into that realm, it would be an unfortunate mistake to think that at that point you must either cajole or beg or compel the life and light to flow forth. That would be actually blocking what will, of its own inherent pressure of love, that which will flow forth from within your God presence and flow forth from the limitless source of the great central sun, as all of the life and vitality and love which you could ever utilize in all eternity. This is one of the great gifts that comes to each and every one at the moment of their ascension, to realize that never again will they ever be subject to outer conditions, the effects of outer conditions, and to understand that through this self-sufficiency, they may distribute and share with all of life the largesse of the heart of God's love that has become their very own heart. This is a lesson well worth learning, because the destiny of the sons and daughters of God is to, in the far distant future, to themselves eventually become godparents of their own sun and sun system, become parts of the creative hierarchies of either the angelic kingdom, of the Christic world, or the world of the mighty Elohim. In all cases, you will understand that these beings give of their own substance of love, which they find within the wellspring of the great central sun connection within themselves. And it is spun forth into the sidereal, three-dimensional universe out of their heart of love. All comes forth from within, and this is the natural order of creation. One of the other benefits that comes in this way is for individuals to just begin to detect the sense of what is truly meant by the abundant life, which is the consciousness of their own I Am presence. In the consciousness of your mighty I Am presence, there is no limitation whatsoever. There is no manner of considering quantifying anything with a factor of limitation. There is a virtually limitless capacity to pour forth all of the life, all of the light, all of the love that is needed for every part of creation. I assure you that when, in those precious times that your consciousness is able, for a few split seconds maybe to begin with, and then later perhaps longer, to make that attunement with your mighty I Am presence, then all of a sudden, the closest thing might be to consider that you are standing at a precipice, such as you might stand at the edge of one of the rims of the Grand Canyon. And looking in one direction, there is a level plain, the prosaic, natural world. Looking in the other direction, just a foot or two beyond where you stand, there is this yawning gulf, this great mouth of the canyon itself that takes your breath away. And you sense the beauty and the immensity of the Godhead. So in that moment of attunement with your mighty I Am presence, you will look through the eyes of that presence, and on the one hand, the plane that you stand on will be like the outer planes, which are quite limited. And on the other hand, you will look into the vast immensity of the inner realms and see there the great globe of the great central sun. And you will be imbued with the consciousness, the God consciousness of the great host of heaven that abide within that great central sun. And first within your awareness will be the sense that, oh yes, here there has been drawn together a great, potent, limitless ocean of God's power, God's life and vitality, held together in the center by the intense magnet of the great love of God. And all of this has been accumulated for holy purpose. It is there that it might be drawn upon by every individualized God-free being, drawn upon to draw forth and to give quality and beauty and substantiality to that creation. And you cannot escape the inevitable sense that all is well in the universe because there is sufficient love and overabundance of life and light, far more sufficient to heal even all of the seeming mountains of adversity upon this planet. And you will come back from that meditation with the sense that, yes, the job can be done. For I have behind me this great river of life, and it is available for me to utilize in the whatever ways I should have to utilize. One of the examples of this that was taught in antiquity, which is such a wonderful, wonderful object lesson, one of the many labors of a Christed Son of God who went by the name of Heracles in the ancient Greek stories. He had many initiations to pass, and one of those seemed to be the overwhelming task of cleaning a series of stables, the stables of King Augeas that had been overrun for decades of negligence by entire herds of horses. And how was one individual ever to be able to clean all of these? The solution was quite simple. Our own Son of God, Heracles, diverted the streams of one or more rivers so that the entire flow of the river was redirected to flow through the stables and to flush out all of that muck and mire and debris, because that was the symbol of the redirecting of the great forces of nature that can be brought into cooperation with embodied mankind. Forces of nature before which even 20th century and 21st century humanity must bow before the great onslaught of those forces of nature. Even those in past civilizations who thought to actually build their towers of technology and attainment to the heavens and challenge God, found that in the final analysis, because their creation was not built upon a foundation of love, and it did send forth misqualification into the universe, that those misqualifications rebounded back, bringing their inevitable limitation back upon humanity. So, torchbearers of the temple, students of the ascended masters, be imbued with the sense that there is no limit whatsoever to the amount of life and light and love that will flow forth from the very heart of God at your disposal. One of the things which we learned from some of the greatest of the creators, the mighty Elohim, is very instructive in this way. They have shared with us that part of developing the consciousness of God abundance is developing the consciousness of zero misqualification and zero waste. They have explained that there is limitless amounts of energy that can be harnessed for each and every divine purpose, no matter how seemingly unimportant that divine purpose might be. There is no detail, no sparrow whose fall to the earth is not recognized by the Godhead and whose purpose might not be fulfilled when it is constructive. So there is really not a case where one should reason, well, the things that I have in mind, what do they figure into the great scheme of the universe? They are not important except to me. If they are constructive, if they are enhancing your divine plan, then the lavish, limitless abundance of the Godhead is there for you and can be entrusted into your care as you learn to preserve each of those electrons of life in the purpose, the holy purpose for which they have been entrusted into your care. So there may be oceans of light that are available for the most mundane, positive task. And at the same time, there is not one sou or one copper penny that can be wasted in the universe. On occasion, I have encouraged the students to train in this lesson by trying, for example, the following exercise. When you get out of your car and as you close your car door, you see a little insignificant copper penny lying there by the side of the road. Don't pass it by because it's only a penny. Because in one sense, it represents to you the simplest increment of God energy. And every increment of God energy is God energy and is therefore worthy to be utilized. And so there is an entire ocean of God life available, but really there is not one electron that is really and ultimately available to be misqualified. So as in every part of our life, we learn to reduce to the absolute minimum in our capacity any form of waste, any form of just casting things aside that could have some useful life left in them. We will be training our inner vehicles to chalice the life that God gives us. And once we have proven that we have learned this lesson, then our Holy Christ Self and the Brotherhood of Light will feel more confident about entrusting greater and greater quantities of light. This must become second nature. It must become an automatic, conditioned response that we make sure that the light that goes forth from us is qualified with God perfection. And then there will be no limit whatsoever to its use. I've mentioned in connection with this the concept of the artesian well. And this is something also that you might wish to meditate upon more and more, that there in the heart of your electronic body, there is power that has been focused as flaming potential, brought to that point of concentration in your mighty I Am presence. That same power is literally all about us in the inner ethers, waiting as a dammed up force, waiting to be released. It's very interesting. The books of the Old Testament tell a certain story and symbology that has a great significance. If I might be permitted for just a moment to illustrate to you how this story was told in the past. The exposition of it came down in the stories that were not written into the actual books of the Old Testament, but were a collection of stories that were handed down from word of mouth for many, many generations and centuries. Eventually, they became codified in a more modern book entitled the Zohar in 5 volumes, which gives a further elaboration on what is found in the scriptures themselves. One of the stories tells of how one of the Old Testament patriarchs, Jacob, after he had left his father's tent and gone out in search of the one to be his companion through life, he came upon a well that had a stone that had been rolled across it. And around that well, there were 3 little flocks of sheep, who were the sheep of Laban, the uncle of Jacob's mother, and the father of Rachel. And there were other cattlemen there who didn't want to roll the stone from off the well, lest the sheep drink it all before their cattle had an opportunity to drink their fill. So the first occasion of the meeting of Jacob and Rachel was when Jacob went ahead and rolled the stone from off the wellhead and fed the 3 flocks of Rachel and of her father Laban. Later on, generations later, as Moses grew and was exiled initially from the courts of Pharaoh, before encountering the fiery burning bush, he came, according to the Zohar, to the exact same well. And Zipporah, his wife-to-be, was there, and like Jacob before him, he rolled the stone from off the well. What is not actually literally recorded in the Bible, but is described in detail in the Zohar, is that as both Jacob and then later Moses gazed down into the well, that the water on those occasions rose up to meet the one who had rolled away the stone. And in the case especially of Moses, you see that you have this as a symbol of the waters of life that are within the heart. The stone is the density of mortality that would seek to block the flow of that artesian well. The density that would prevent the three flocks, each representing themselves one of the plumes of the threefold flame, from being nurtured and from drawing upon that universal crystalline source that would feed the plumes of gold, pink, and blue. Then, when that artesian water rose to greet its master, it was able to flow, be directed by Moses and by Aaron into all of the things that were done for the ancient Israelites by way of the plagues that brought about and orchestrated their deliverance. And what did that produce later? But it produced water from the rock. It produced manna from on high. It produced the pillar of fire and the cloud of witness that went before the Israelites. It was there as the Shekinah glory that shone from the mercy seat above the ark. It was there as the lights and measures, the Urim and the Thummim in the breastplate of the high priest. All of these were manifestations of this life force, this great limitless well of God consciousness that flowed forth from the very heart of God. Now these mysteries have been drawn aside, and each and every one of you are able to officiate as your own priest and priestess before the altar of your own heart, and you are able to call down fire from on high, fire to go forth as whatever form of creativity might be the need of the hour. If you need deliverance, may it go forth as lightning to strike down those forces that would oppose your divine plan. If you need nourishment, if you need encouragement, may it go forth as the waters of life to bring joy and courage and strength into your limbs. If you need raiment, if you need abundance, if you need love, companionship, everything is there for you to draw forth from within yourself. This might seem to be somewhat of a daunting lesson. It might seem that it's a little bit overwhelming to consider. But trust me when I tell you that one way or the other, everyone who is going to become and going to be an ascended master will learn this lesson, that all they need is within their own I am presence, and that they can draw forth from that presence all of those qualities that are within that light. This is the great lesson of the lovers of life, the great lesson of the crucible and the crystal fire mist, that there is this bubbling spring of eternal life within you. Goodness gracious, ladies and gentlemen, you already are eternal life. Maybe your eternal life experiences a hiccup every 60 or 80 years or so, but eternal life it is. You have no idea how long the unbroken stream of your individuality has been pouring forth and pouring forth and pouring forth and will continue to pour forth. That part of it you don't even have to make any attempt. It's already who and what you have been, are today, and will be for eternity. I think you might agree with me that that being the case, it might be a good idea if all of us wised up and figured out the solution to the enigma of life, which is, I am that I am. I am that presence. I am the creator of my own destiny, the fashioner of my own world, and rise into that world which is the fullness of one's own mighty I am presence and begin to draw it forth. How invaluable is that limitless consciousness? To realize that whatever obstacle you might face in any world whatsoever, hopefully you will agree that that obstacle is finite. It may be a big number. It may have a lot of foot-pounds of energy behind it, but it is finite. It is not infinite. And because it is finite, when you apply the lever of your infinite presence, the light that goes forth from your infinite presence, to that finite issue, and then, if I might be permitted to use this word, you are merciless about the annihilation of that finite problem. You are not sympathetic, but you direct the light into that condition from your mighty I am presence, not certainly against another blessed heart flame, but against a condition that is an impersonal expression of life that has confronted you. And you direct that light from your mighty I am presence, inasmuch as your presence is limitless and infinite and lives in eternity. It is a small thing to your presence to hold that light ray fixed and focused on that condition. Maybe holding it in abeyance for a little while, but sooner or later drilling through that condition and creating a perfect erasure of every last vestige, including even the memory of that condition. Goodness gracious, how short a time is 12,000 years? There are hardly any memories that anybody has older than 12,000 years. That's just the blink of an eye in the Earth's history and probably in a lot of our history as well. But nobody remembers all of those problems or difficulties from that long ago. Nature has erased them from her memory and our memory. And so it shall be with every last human condition. They will be erased, and in their place will come this great incoming tide of God good. While we have focused on the character of divine abundance about this great central sun momentum, would like to just in passing remind all of you that in addition to the unqualified God life, there is the great fire rings of the great central sun, which have been qualified with creativity from countless worlds, similar to the causal body rings of your own mighty I am presence. And all of that divine virtue has been stored up there in the barns and treasuries and granaries of the I am that I am. It is all there as God virtue, stored up to be dispensed and shared with the sons and daughters of God when at long last they are ready to give forth the call to draw out of that light all that is necessary. In numbers, our numbers as torchbearers at present are small outwardly. Inwardly, we know there are many tens of thousands who will come forth. So it is incumbent upon us to shout our faith through our decrees, through the first and second halves of our decree book, and to draw forth all of this avalanche of God good from the great central sun, which will bring forth the thrust of light, the momentum of light that will move out into the universe and bring all manifestations into this world that are needed for the golden age. We will say, I am here, I am there, even to the very heart of God in the great central sun. I am the governing intelligence of this entire universe. I am the God power that is acting there in the central sun and here on earth. I am God intelligence acting there in the central sun and here upon the earth. I am God's substance acting there and bringing the perfect manifestation here upon the earth. I would like to share with you the simple faith of our beloved Jesus in one of the greatest poems wherein he imbued with this sense, had the sense of this great abiding wellspring of life that was his inheritance, that was part of the Father's great bequest unto his life stream. It is the psalm that many are taught to memorize in their childhood. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul, and leadeth me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So, beloved students, as you go forth, take this God consciousness of self-sufficiency with you. Take this consciousness of your source, that you can be the source of your own mighty I Am presence. At least have the faith that a young French separatist had about 100+ years ago when her mother directed her to go drink of the spring where there was nothing but other people saw was a rubbish heap and a dried piece of earth. But in her faith, she did as her mother bid her to do. And there, as she struck the level of that water, you had the phenomenon of the artesian well flow. And ever since that day, there have been, I don't know what the volume is, maybe 10,000 gallons a day of healing waters that have gone forth from that little wellspring, which have brought healing and surcease of pain, miracles of the abundant life to many, many countless true believers. This is symbolic of the great wellspring of the life and light and love that issues forth always from the very heart of God in the great central sun. It is because we know that that source is there, guarded, guided, directed, channeled by the ascended masters, as we call it forth, that we have the dauntless courage and faith to set forth this little company upon the great task, the great work of the brotherhood of bringing in the golden age. Thank you.